Hello class, and welcome to our presentation, Introduction to Chinese Religion. So in this presentation, we will be introduced to some of the major beliefs and practices associated with ancient Chinese religion. And the reason we're doing this is because in order for us to fully grasp the two major religious traditions in China that we'll be discussing in the next 2 weeks, Taoism and Confucianism, we first need some historical context. So with that in mind, let us continue. So Chinese civilization is one of the most ancient, the earliest written records dating back to around 2000 BCE. And these written records reveal that early Chinese religion was what is called animistic in nature. So what is animism? Animism refers to a form of religion that emphasizes the presence of the spiritual in nature. So animist religions acknowledge that the natural world and the spiritual world are connected and indeed inseparable, that spiritual entities don't exist in an otherworldly reality, but rather they exist within the natural world, within trees, rivers, mountains, etc. Now, with early Chinese animism, two kinds of spirits exist in the natural world. What are called Shen spirits, which are good or benevolent spirits who are associated with light, and Kuei spirits, or evil or harmful spirits, which are associated with darkness. Now, during the Shang dynasty between the 7th to 11th centuries BCE, a more complex otherworldly religious belief system developed. Now, this is not to say that animism disappears. Animism is still actually alive and well in even contemporary Chinese religion. But there also developed this kind of otherworldly religious belief system as well. And within this religion, the Shang religion, there existed a separate spiritual reality called Tian, meaning roughly heaven. And according to the Shang religion, within this spiritual reality of Tian, there exist the spirits of deceased ancestors, powerful gods and goddesses, and a supreme god called Shangdi, the supreme god. And according to the Shang religion, heaven, or the spiritual world, and earth, or the natural world, are not completely separated from one another. Rather, humans are able to communicate with deceased ancestors as well as gods through prayer and other rituals. So heaven and earth are intimately interconnected. Now, one such ritual was ancestor veneration, where humans on earth pay homage to the deceased in hopes that the spirits of deceased ancestors will aid them in this world. And in this ritual, offerings of food, money, and prayers are made to the spirits of the deceased. Now, ancestor veneration or ancestor worship, although it has ancient roots, it is still very much alive today, not only in China, but also in the surrounding regions of Korea, Vietnam, and other regions of Southeast Asia. Now, as Chinese religion continued to develop from the Zhou dynasty from the 11th to the 3rd centuries BCE, it came to be dominated by three religious belief systems: Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. And these three religions were founded by a group of three men called the Three Chinese Sages. And it would be Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism, Buddha, of course, the founder of Buddhism, and Confucius, the founder or reformer of what we call Confucianism. And just as an FYI, another famous figure within Chinese religion is Budai, or the Laughing Buddha, who is believed by Chinese Buddhists to be a 9th century reincarnation of Siddhartha Gautama. Now, the following note is extremely important, so put like an asterisk or a unicorn or something on this slide. So Chinese religion is said to be what is called eclectic in nature, That is, Chinese religion is a mix of different beliefs and practices from diverse and often conflicting traditions. So, for example, it is not unlikely for a Chinese practitioner to be a Taoist, a Buddhist, and a Confucian all at the same time, while also adhering to certain ancient folk practices or kind of local, like religious and kind of animistic beliefs and practices. So, Chinese religion is eclectic, meaning that when someone from China is considered to be, religious, spiritual, it's not unlikely that they will adhere to several different formal and local folk traditions. All right, so we have discussed Chinese animism, the Shang religion, and the three Chinese sages, but we still have yet to talk about probably the most famous symbol associated with Chinese beliefs, and that would be the yin-yang. Now, what is the yin-yang? So the yin-yang is an ideogram or a picture that kind of like tells a story, depicting the interplay of two opposing forces, yin and yang. That is, the yin-yang is a symbol that depicts the idea that the world is comprised of two opposing forces, which when combined result in the creation and sustainment of life. And the forces of yin and yang manifest themselves as opposite phenomena in the world, as is seen in the following diagram. So as we can see here, just a traditional kind of depiction of the yin-yang. And as we can see, the yin-yang is comprised of two kind of opposing forces. The force of yin, or the black, which is associated with the feminine, the passive, the cold, wet, the destructive, and earth. And the force of yang, which is identified as the white, and as masculine, active, warm, dry, preservative, and also associated with heaven. So as we can see, these two forces are opposing and they represent different manifestations in the world. But when yin and yang interact, it results in the creation and sustainment of the world. Now, speaking of creation, according to Chinese tradition, how did the world come to be? Well, this issue is addressed by several different creation accounts, but the most famous would be the myth of Pangu, the myth of Nuwa, and the Han account on creation. And of course, this week we are going to be discussing these creation accounts, so at this point it might be a good idea to pick them up and read them.